Hey, Antonio, thank you for coming in. You have such a marvelous background in entrepreneurship and innovation and investments, venture capital, working with incubators, and now you're with, I'm not sure if I got the pronunciation right, whether it's Fongit or Fongi, but anyways, we'll get to that. But anyways, thank you for coming in today and sharing all of your wisdom and experience and insights with our audience.
Thank you very much for having me. I mean, it's sure, and I'll try to do my best to explain you a bit more about the secret sauce of Fongit, in fact.
Okay, Fongit. Okay, thank you so much. So, my audience actually is quite diverse. There's like scientists in the audience and entrepreneurs, a lot of CEOs, by the way. I get a lot of board members, CEOs, and investors, and that follow my work, and notable experts and so on. So it's very diverse. And my audience is always curious. You got this marvelous history of success and accomplishment, and they're curious about what are the maybe two or three inflection points that were like the change makers in your life that created this wonderful person that you are today.
Yeah, but you're talking about me personally or the foundation?
No, you personally, sort of your
Okay,
career
yeah.
arc, right?
Okay, I mean, I'd like to. I try to talk as little as possible about me, because I mean, we are what we are, and life makes us what we are. The fact is, that what is interesting is that when you look then in the mirror of your life, you see that you managed to draw something that you didn't know in advance that it was going to be that. It was not going, it was looking like being not with a lot of meaning or sense, but in fact it has. So there is some consistency, some coherence in what you do in life. And I guess this applies to me as well, because I mean, I started by studying something completely different than innovation technology, because it was music, in fact. So I started I started playing music, and then I went into more financial stuff, in particular economics at university, and then. And then I was kind of lucky enough, if you remember, it was the 99 2000 years where the bubble, internet bubble, was starting to grow and eventually to burst. And at that time, nobody knew about what internet was, or very few people, at least in Europe, and in particular in Italy, where I started, because I am Italian of origin. And you had to be just young and know how to turn on a computer, and immediately you became kind of an internet expert, something that nobody knew what was. And with that, I managed with some friends to raise a first VC fund, and then a second, and it was a typical fund of that age, vintage internet, how we call it, probably the most expensive way to spend money for investors and teach a young generation how to do business. And I started to do that. What is interesting, though, is we were investing in seed company, actually going very early on in the value chain to scout for the good companies around, companies that were not yet as such. They were entrepreneurs, maybe in research centers like the CERN here in Geneva, or like a university, PFL, or other great university in Europe, getting these entrepreneurs and building around them the companies. Why we had to do this? Because companies were already expensive at that time, so the bubble was mounting. So we were doing seed investments. And what we realized is the following, that actually was, in my opinion, the real inflection point of my life, professional life at least, that if you invest as a pure financial investor, as we were, into seed company, inevitably you diverge in the interests with entrepreneurs, with time. And the reason is simple. When you invest into companies, in particular, we were investing in tech companies, which are just starting. An entrepreneur, very often coming out from university, he needs time. It takes time to develop a company. The entrepreneur makes mistake. The entrepreneur is never ready at the beginning. The market is not ready very often for a technology, while the investor is playing against the time. Then the entrepreneur needs more time, but the investor is playing against the time. So at some point, it happens that when the entrepreneurs needs the money, then the investor is not willing to give any more money because he needs to exit the investment. And this is what happened to me, to my fund, to most of the seed funds at that time. And we had to pull the plug of many good, promising companies. So we had to destroy value because there was no financial interest in keeping the investment active. So that, in my opinion, was a big wake-up call. As private investors, in fact, I quit venture capital and I say, no, I want to start to support companies and entrepreneurs in a different ways. I started to do with private investment first, always working together with entrepreneurs, with skin in the game. And then after that, a few years ago, in 2014, the state of Geneva asked me to become the managing director of this foundation, the Fongit, Fondation Genevoise pour l'Innovation Technologique, which stands a bit like Geneva Foundation for Tech Innovation, which is a non-profit organization doing exactly the same job I was doing back as a seed VC, but this time with no idea of making profits. Giving the time, giving patient capital, forgiving to entrepreneurs. And this is the only way you can actually make a real support to entrepreneurship, in particular tech entrepreneurship, and thriving the great talent pool that we can have around.
That's really fascinating. I know you hold a degree in economics from the University of Milan, and you've done some upgrading with Singularity University in California, but you indicated this interest in music, and then you end up becoming a venture capitalist, and you had like offices in Switzerland, Italy, and California. So you have this, but you were a financial investor. And you're saying that the needs of the financial investor are really different from the needs of the entrepreneur. And that was a big wake-up call. So you then went into private investing, because then you could be a strategic investor. You could be in partnership with the entrepreneur to help them grow. And as you indicated, then you got skin in the game because you're part of their journey. And then in 2014, you got this marvelous offer from a nonprofit, Fongit, which is the Geneva Foundation for Technology Innovation, where you could do all the right things when you're working with entrepreneurs, and be patient and work with them and go on their journey, because it takes time. So that's really an interesting sort of story arc in this whole area of working with entrepreneurs and seed startups and so on. Can you give a little bit of history prior to you becoming the director, or did you come the director at the time of the founding of Fongit?
No. The foundation actually was born in 1991 created by an entrepreneur who, in fact, failed twice before creating a company that went public. And is an entrepreneur, a Geneva-based entrepreneur, that failed the first time because he was all alone, and the second time because it was with his brother, but he made a technology that the market didn't want. So when he had finally the success he deserved, he said that I want to give back, and I'd like to create something that can possibly prevent other entrepreneurs to have the same painful experience that I had to go through. Because if I only had someone helping me out with the basic business things that I didn't have at that time, this is always the founder who is saying that, then I could have avoided a lot of mistakes. So this is why I created this foundation. And he contributed with his own money to the foundation. And since then, the foundation has always been doing the same activity. supporting tech entrepreneurs to transform an idea, an invention, a research into sustainable economic business. So this process of innovation is the one we try to foster in entrepreneurs. And the world has changed. The type of technologies we have been supporting have changed in the past, in these years, but the mission of the foundation has always been the same. So you see that the goal of the foundation, which has been later on supported by also the local government. So this is very unique. It is a private-public partnership. We keep hearing this type of wording from time to time, you know, and what is this? I mean, that works. Well, you know, in Switzerland and in Geneva, it does. So we are a fantastic example of private-public partnership working, because we have a private foundation with private governance, with the same, I would say, agility, entrepreneurial approach of a private institution, but with the public supporting, financing, and I would say also institutional endorsement, you know, which helps also the startups. So with that, the foundation started, and it was going at the same speed as innovation used to be in Europe at those times, so very slow. And then eventually, when I arrived in 2014, the foundation was supporting about 25 companies, really nothing, you know. Now we have more than 130 companies, which represent more than 1,500 people. And the support we give is related to what an entrepreneur needs. An entrepreneur doesn't need to have the moon solved. He knows, or she knows, where the moon is and how to reach. We need to support. Our job is simple. We listen to entrepreneurs and we try to support them with what? With the typical things, office space, real estate, but also with all the accounting, admin support. We help to create the governance, the board, and we also give money, which always is very helpful to bootstrap the activity with the type of money I was mentioning before, this kind of patient and forgiving capital.
No, that's a really interesting model. Like you said, you know, there's all of this talk about private-public partnerships, but really, this is a really good example where you indicated there was an entrepreneur who had difficulty, and then he became quite successful, and then he started this foundation, and then you get this capital coming in from the public purse, and now you can take startups on this journey, and you can help them along, and so on. And there weren't that many when you came on as director in 2014, but now you're well over 100 that you're helping to support. For the audience, they may not realize, people think of Geneva as a city, but it's more than a city. Can you kind of describe the geography of Switzerland and sort of the geopolitical environment of what Geneva is? It's more than a city, right? So can you describe that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Switzerland is a very good example of a confederation of states, in fact. So we are different states. And Geneva is one of these states. There is a confederation, so we just meet for deciding on the major elements. But then there is a very much a strong autonomy of each single canton of the confederation, and Geneva is one of this canton, one of these states. What is interesting is that each state is completely independent, and each state can decide its policies, in particular the economic policies. So you need to think, Switzerland, we have 26 different cantons, very small geography, because in the end, if you take the population of Switzerland, which is about 8 million, more or less, is less than the London area, the London City area. So I did this. So it's a very particular state. And so the canton, Geneva Canton, which is a small state, I guess it has about 400,000 or 500,000 of citizens, has a tremendous density of research centers, the universities of multinationals. The European Organization for Nuclear Research, the CERN, where the famous the boson Higgs it has been discovered, and many other things, is based in Geneva. So imagine this tremendous human capital around with this density, which is able to produce, of course, a lot of interesting innovation. Now, to get to your point, so Geneva has the full autonomy when it comes to economic policy, which is great. And this is actually why our model public-private works, because in such a small kind of country, state, the accountability of our action is complete. So every other day I received a call of our Minister of the Economy, say, Antonio, how is going? Yeah, it's fine, it's good. Yeah. So you see, this kind of interaction, this proximity helps actually to have also this kind of control, for this type of partnership. And this is pretty unique. What I can say is also that this fragmentation at the cantonal level might also be seen as a limitation, which it is, in fact, because in the end, when there is an investor coming from the United States and things is happening more and more frequently, because Switzerland now is really on the map of any tech investor. We are among the top 5 countries in Europe raising money, VC money now regularly. I mean, it's very difficult to explain to this investor why Geneva is a state on its own, and just nearby there's another state, and maybe we don't do the same things, So the fragmentation might be a limitation, but the good news is that at least at our level, innovation level, we all work together. We know that Switzerland wins. So Geneva wins if the entire Switzerland wins. And so this is what we do also with my colleagues doing similar activities.
So let's say a startup from another canton is interested in Fongit, but they're not situated in your canton. Can they get support, or do they have to actually set up an office somehow within the Geneva canton?
Okay, technically, they should have a presence in Geneva. So this is the G of Fongit is Geneva. And I understand that it's kind of, it looks like really the small game of little cantons. However, what happens is that we are there to help all entrepreneurs. So very often there is an entrepreneur coming, Antonia, I'd like some support. No problem. I'm going to put in contact with the VC or the good investors, which I think is appropriate for the sector is dealing or she's dealing with, and also for the maturity of his or her project. So again, Geneva wins if Switzerland wins, and vice versa. So we have all interest in supporting all the companies. Then you should also say that we have the airport in Geneva. So Geneva is really the door opener for the world. We have an international organization based in Geneva. I mean, there are many good reasons for startups to get established in Geneva, but there are also good reasons for going in other cantons. And they are Swiss, and we support Switzerland as much as we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fascinating. The population of Switzerland as a whole is like the population of Israel, and Israel, of course, is a big magnet as well in terms of innovation and so on, and sort of the unique, integration of all the different pieces. And I can see that in Geneva as well, because I've been there many, many times. I mean, I'm one of the founders of this thing called AI for Good, and actually raised all the money initially for it, and went on the road to try to get it going. So I'm gonna now put myself in the role of a starstruck entrepreneur who's in research at one of your universities, and I think, oh wow, I've got this idea, and I know it's going to take over the world. It's such a great idea. And I'm a venture capitalist, so I always think you got to progress more than an idea. But so what's that process? Can they approach you even at that ideation stage where they've got some, excuse me, some research they've done to suggest this could be a good idea, and then you'll incubate them along, and then what does that feel like, for that entrepreneur as they go on that journey? How do they get in touch with you? How do you determine if they're at the right stage? What is that stage where you ingest them? And then, what does that day-to-day activity look like? So you talked about it in general sense. You'll help them with governance, and there's office space, and you'll give them advice and so on. But I'm knocking on your door. I'm at your website. What do I do next?
Yeah. It really depends from the sector of activity, because of course, if you are an entrepreneur coming up with a project in life science, maybe a biotech company, then of course, even at the research level, you have a lot of content, right? So we can really shape the project very, very early on. We can even help the entrepreneur, if it's still a university, to negotiate properly with the tech transfer office of those universities. This is the typical kind of sweet spot where the Swiss innovation normally relies. It's a deep tech projects coming from university, research centers, and so on. If you are a company coming more from the digital world, then I think the maturity of the project must be a bit more advanced, but simply because that proves the ability of the entrepreneur actually to deliver something. In one case, it's the research at academic level. In is the execution on a digital project which has low entry market barrier, so the speed of execution needs to go accordingly. Anyway, I don't want to go into such details. I don't think it's important for our audience. What I can tell, however, that no matter what, at the stage of development where our foundation intervenes, which is very, very, very early on. So you were talking about venture capital. Before venture capital, we have the angel investment type of rounds. Before you have the friends and family, let's say at pre-seed level, we have, that normally you talk about the 3F, the friends, family, and fool type of investment, which is completely emotional. They don't see the exit. They just like the project. Maybe they know the entrepreneur. In Geneva, we say that we have the friends, family, fool, and Fongit, the 4F intervening at that point. It means what? It means that ultimately the most important criteria that we look when we assess the projects is the entrepreneur and the team coming with the entrepreneur. So we have seen many companies succeeding, many companies failing. The main reason for either succeeding or failing was eventually only one: the team. And very rarely I've seen companies failing for technology. Even biotech companies, which normally are more inclined to failing for those reasons. So the team is really the key element. And finding the right team, the right combination, the right really energy is so important. I think this is the most important element, and this is our first assessment. We receive per year about 400 requests of support, and we end up accepting, about 20-25, more or less. So you see, the selection is mainly in the end driven by the team criteria.
I see. I mean, that's quite interesting. So you get 400 requests, you accept about 20, as you indicated, right? So, yeah. So you can see the sort of the ratio of the acceptance rate.
Yeah.
In that initial stage, where you do this due diligence, and you indicated the importance of team, and I'm an investor as well, and I can see that, right? I mean that companies will need to pivot often, and but they have to be adaptable, and it's really volatile when you're a startup. So you have to have a team that perseveres and keeps willing to go with that volatility, and just works really, really hard and with focus, and takes advice as well, and that is amenable to advice, and that the team cohesion is there; they don't fragment, right? So I live that as well, live that journey, because we're a strategic investor. So I understand all of those elements, and I understand its importance. When you start cutting that check to support them, because you're so early, it sounds like it'll be like a 50K or 50 Swiss francs check or something like that. You're that early, right? Or 100,000 Swiss francs.
We can go up to 500,000, in fact, in different stages, but we have programs for financing directly our companies up to 500,000. And what is interesting is that we become shareholders of the companies. This is an extremely important element that we do, unlike other organizations, similar organizations. In which sense? And allow me to explain, because I think it's really one of the key elements. We are a non-profit, and that's clear. We are non-profit, but we are not for business. Unlike other organizations, both accelerators and even incubators, in having tremendous success, they take shares, they take equity in their programs. Our approach is slightly different. Even if we are state supported, we are allowed to finance companies and buy shares, but at the price of the company at that time. So it means that we set the first price tag of the company, which is also helpful for the entrepreneur. It's not that we arrive there just because we are Fongit, we take 5-10%. No, not at all. What is your valuation? We negotiate with entrepreneur, and that's it. And why we like to become investors and shareholders of the companies? For two main reasons that actually echo my personal experience as a venture capital. The first is because we want to have show to the entrepreneur that we have skin in the game. So we want to be completely at the same side of the entrepreneur. Very often, we also sit on the board of those companies. It means that the entrepreneur sees us as a partner. So very often, we also negotiate on behalf of the entrepreneur future fundraising with new investors. Why? Because we have the same shares, same class of shares as the entrepreneur has. We are on the board, and we have also this institutional endorsement. I mean, it's kind of credible. We give a lot of credibility hand in hand with the entrepreneur, and this it is extremely helpful for them. And the second reason why we want to become shareholders of these companies is even more fundamental, is the ability for us to sustain our activity for the future. Every time that there is a company which is bought, so it's a trade sale, it's a so-called exit, even if this word is a bit weird, but it's an exit of a company. What happens is that the money of the shares of the foundation the money comes back into the foundation. And then we are able to deploy that money for additional companies. The idea is that we have a kind of a community where the entrepreneurs of today are the ones helping entrepreneurs of tomorrow, thanks to their success. And it is thanks to that we had about 7 exits in the last 10 years. I don't remember now. Small, big, it really depends. We have been able to get money to the foundation more and been able to support more and more company. It is like this that we managed to bring from 25 to more than 130 companies supported, and this is very unique. It's really this unique story of successful collaboration between the public and private sector, where the public, the state of Geneva, has empowered Fongit as a private institution to execute this kind of economic policies related to innovation for the Geneva state.
In fact, I really understand all of the things you're saying, because I see that in Israel, because we made investments in Israel. But I recently did an interview with the Deep Tech Fund of the Canadian government. It's called the Canadian Government Business Development Corporation Deep Tech Fund, and they operate like a strategic investor, and they take shares and they help to accelerate the company, and this idea that it has to be a sustainable program. It's just not a granting program. It's a sustainable program. And when they invest, and this is public information because I did an interview, then it sets a price point, a valuation for that company, right? And because you have this state partner that's part of it, it helps add credibility. So I can see all of that being a value. Plus, you're going to attract capital and partners that a company may have difficulty doing, because you have this public-private partnership. So you can bring in partners, and thus you can help scale the company, the startup, that would be difficult for the startup on their own, or perhaps even difficult if they take standard early angel investing and so on, or other kinds of investing. And then even later in institutional investing, like venture capital comes in. The fact that you can bring in other partners. So I guess this question then talks about that, and I see that in Israel too. A lot of great startups, but really the magic is if somebody can identify a great startup and then scale it globally by bringing other global partners to the table, because of the networks they have. Mm-hmm. So what are the kind of networks do you have at Fongit to help scale these amazing startups, seed startups that you're in partnership with?
Yeah, I will answer to this question. If then we can go back to the previous point about the different model of innovation and the role of the state, because I find this really at the core of what we are living today. So innovation now is a key word. All politicians, they stop talking about progress, now they talk about innovation, but it's really the idea of innovation. But if you don't mind, we go back to that point. I think it's interesting to expand a bit further. The network. I mean, the network is the essence in the end of the success of a company, but more in general of any human initiative, I would say. Not to being too philosophical. In the end, we are relational entities, so we need to exchange. And also with startups and companies, eventually it happens the same. So our network is driven by the needs, again, of the startups, of the entrepreneurs. And an entrepreneur creating his or her own company normally requires two things. One is money, and two is one, money, it comes to the investors, and the proof is not client, but the proof of the activities carry on is through clients. So this is more appropriate. So with that, what we do, we have established a network of investors, and where we are, in my opinion, pretty good at is to define. Since you come from the industry, that one of the most frustrating experience for both entrepreneurs and investors is to meet at the wrong time. Is when is either too soon or too late. I mean, is too soon is slightly better for the investor, because at least you start to know the company, but you still, you lost some time, some of your precious time. And when it's too late, is even worse, because you just missed the opportunity. And for the entrepreneur, the same thing. If it's too late, you don't have money, and so on. So what I'm trying to say here is that there is a right investor for each phase of a company. When you're a seed company, you need to have a certain type of investor, normally private individuals, angel, more or less sophisticated angels, some maybe small family office interested in the field, but definitely not venture capital. Venture capital are a waste of time for them, for the entrepreneurs, but also for the venture capital themselves. There is always this moment of lost in translation, when you have a startup which is just starting, approaching a venture capital, and then they don't find each other. They talk a different language very often because the maturity is different. And then after a while, then you have maybe evolution, seed, A round. At A round, normally round that in Europe are more in the range of between 5 and 10 million, which is lower than United States. Then you start to talk to the first VCs, VCs that are used to invest maybe in pre-revenue companies that you start to talk, but not the big guys, not the big VCs. Again, it would be a waste of time. And bit by bit, you build your financing history, and you build also your credibility, because hopefully the company is able to deliver on its promises. So also the credibility increases, and the more kind of sophisticated venture capital are ready to invest when the right time comes. So for us, timing is the key issue. So we want actually to optimize it for startups. This, when it comes to the investors, it comes the same for the clients. Even with the clients, it's one of the most frustrating experience for multinational approaching a startup. They don't even know what a purchase order is. A startup. They're really lost. So we're really trying to bridge this gap and present the startup only when they have a real product ready at the level that a multinational is keen to do. And these are for the main requirement of companies. Then, of course, our network is based on where it makes sense for us to be. A lot of connection at university level, at CERN, where we have the deal flow of good projects, and a lot also of interaction with the government and the different organization, international organization as well, which are a very key partner for us, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense, and you're trying to do this perfect matchmaking, depending on the maturity of the startup. So there's a better fit, as you indicated, alignment of purpose, and when there's alignment of purpose, then you're going to get much more efficient deployment of capital, but also to help scale that company as they go through these different stages. And because of where you're situated, you're going to attract, as you mentioned earlier, investors and other people from other countries, just like Israel has attracted a lot of investors and people from other countries. Do you work then? And because Switzerland has a life science kind of area, a lot of deep tech expertise, great educational system, great research in the Geneva canton. Do you also find that the big tech companies or the big companies are interested in partnering in your region as well with Fongit?
Yeah, it depends what you mean by tech companies, but definitely we have. The tech companies come here for scouting new technologies, maybe possible acquisitions as well, or just a simple partnership. It really depends on sectors. Of course, we have a lot of companies in the fintech space. Fintech space where you have this typical Swiss type of fintech, more B2B, instead of trying to disrupt a market like more the fintech you can find in London, for example. Here you have fintech trying to support the financial system. The clients of this fintech is the banks, in fact. So with that, you have sometimes some tech companies approaching this for having an interesting perspective of how the future of the financing system could be, for example. also at a situation where it comes more to the security market, as you might think, Switzerland is very strong in security and privacy in general. So we have very good companies, global leaders in that get very often approached by these companies, these bigger groups trying to find ways to collaborate. And of course, as you were mentioning, life science is a big sector for us here, from pharma, biotech and medtech, in particular the last two, so biotech and medtech in the Western Geneva, Western Switzerland, are very strong. And in that specific sector, without being too technical, almost, let's say, very often the natural evolution of a company, of a startup reaching a certain level of maturity is to partner with a larger group. Most of the time, biotech and pharma, they get exited or they get both acquired or partnering with a larger group. So of course, to get to your point, yes, we have a lot of companies approaching us and being active. How do they engage with us? They're part of our community. They come to all the events. They come to the events. The best way to establish a network is when you don't need it. So you start to talk with people without having anything, and then they start to talk. They get, in particular, entrepreneurs that tend to be a bit suspicious, a bit prudent in their approach. They get to establish a relationship, and then maybe something comes out of it.
I think that's interesting. You must then hold events where not only for the local community, but where investors from overseas can come in and we use this sort of phrase like kick the tires, just kind of see Fongit in action, and get a flavor for the kind of seed companies. Do you hold these events, or do you have these kind of events maybe once or twice a year? And I guess it'll become more face-to-face next year, or do you do that? It must be.
We're already face-to-face. No, we're already face-to-face. As you know, Switzerland had a very pragmatic approach when it comes to treating the pandemic wave we got, and so we are already face-to-face. We are in a prudent face-to-face mode, let me say so. But yes, we run event. The community aspect is probably the glue which holds everything together. In the end, when you create innovation systems, what is extremely important is the critical mass. So to have quantity of people talking to each other, and then eventually something happens, including coming out the exception. So events for us is the perfect platform where we as catalyst can trigger the relationships to come out. And I think this is we do it regularly. We have at least 3 events per month. And then we have every quarter a more kind of focused investors event where we gather our investor group to see. This is not a typical demo day because we don't run as accelerators in batches, in cohorts. We just have an evergreen. We just an evergreen process. So when we have companies raising money, we just bring them in, and then our investors, they come. And every quarter we showcase the best companies we have. And then we have some more special events, such as the 30th anniversary that we're going to celebrate this month, at the end of this month. It's actually 32 years of Fongit, 30 plus 2. And we're going to have a big event gathering all our stakeholders together.
You must have a target or some kind of a range of a budget in terms of maybe it's 2 million a year that you're going to deploy, or 5 million a year, or Swiss francs. Do you have some kind of target investment amount per year, or do you work or structure in that way at all?
No, that's a very good question, which is related to what I was saying before in terms of the value of the state support. So you need to realize that our state provides more or less the equivalent per year, the equivalent of the management fee of a fund of I would say 150 million, 200 million. So so we are actually even more, 300 million, probably is 2%, yeah, 6 million per year. So it means that the operational expenses of our infrastructure, the events we run, the office for our entrepreneurs, the accounting for our entrepreneurs is paid by this operational budget of around 6 million per year. And this is the possibility, the freedom we have to let the entrepreneurs go. Of course, becoming very careful. We don't want to have free riders or people that, no, or even zombie companies. No, we don't want those. But we just, again, patient. And then next to it, next to this budget, operational budget, we have the financing budget, which is much more consistent, which is thanks to the exits we have done, the investment we have done with the years, and this can deploy much more per year every year. And this is where actually we make the growth, we make the investments, and we make what I was saying, this kind of circular link between the different entrepreneurs, the transgenerational link between entrepreneurs.
You know, that's you know, kind of fascinating, right? You have this operational side, and then of course you have the financing side as well.
Yeah.
And earlier on, and we're down to the closing minutes of our interview here, our chat, you talked about some kind of innovation models and so forth, and you want to go back to that. So I want to go back to that sort of placeholder you put on the wall.
Thank you. Because my passion, but not my passion, is the passion of the foundation. The people that we are working in the foundation are all exceptional individuals, because in the end, we are a non-profit. You know, we don't get any carried interest in what we do. So why we do this? We do this for the simple reason that is important doing this. Again, innovation, as I was saying, is the key word everyone uses. Is the only way you make now politicians a bit kind of wake up to something, you know, in terms of the future. And but the reality is that innovation is for real probably the most important element we have for providing a better future for our generation. So our role is really to build you know, new products, new models, making the world a better place. Definitely a world that is healthier, is more balanced. You know, it's a more equal world. It's more responsible world. All our young entrepreneurs are telling us that. So therefore, how to support them? And this is the thing. What is the role of the state in doing this? Of course, the state in the years, in the decades, has gone through different ways in supporting innovation. And by the way, just to, in parentheses, innovation for us is the process of transforming ideas, invention into economic and social impact. There is something that comes out of it. It's a process. This transformational process, state have been trying to support in different ways. You were mentioning Israel, you know, fantastic example of a state-driven type of support. Very often, I would say, military-driven, which is okay, because, you know, a big percentage of the GDP of Israel went in military research, military expenses there for research. Some years, even up to 20% of the GDP of Israel was going in military research. But that's fine. This is the role of the entrepreneurial state, so to say. An entrepreneur was investing into infrastructure. It's great. But now, what next? There are different models. The state as client, for example, trying to help entrepreneurs at first, trying to buy service from entrepreneurs. And now you have also the role of the state as investor. So you have, for example, in France, the initiative of the BPI France, you know, la Banque Publique d'Investissement, fantastic. They make fund matching of investments, a different state. But the model we are talking here is a model which works very, very early on. The model of Fongit is a unique model because all the others, they're working well, but at a different stage of development. Our model is a model where the state empowers other organizations, which are a non-profit, doing their job. So this is important. Sometimes the state decides to invest money into startups. Maybe they co-invest into venture capital funds, okay? Very good, it works. The European fund model, for example, is like that. They give money to venture capital investing on their behalf. But again, it's for profit. So it intervenes a bit later on, not early stage or very early stage. Our role fits exactly when a project decides to become a company. And the only way to do it is not to give money directly from the state, but to give money through non-profit organization like Fongit is, with this kind of governance combined public and private, but with the agility and efficacy of a private model. This is the only way it can work. Because if not, you will not be fast enough, reactive, and talk the same language as an entrepreneur. So you see what I mean? So the state is there, but empowers someone else, which has the same affinity because we are both non-for-profit. We are there for supporting the local economy, but with the private DNA of doing what it takes to get there. And this is, in my opinion, the other way that we are, the new way probably for this specific type of stage of maturity of companies, that together with the other innovation models that was very briefly, and sorry to be very superficial, I was trying to picture, I think that our model is really kind of well completing the way and a way that the state could use, and also not only Geneva or Switzerland, but other states can use for supporting innovation at a seed and pre-seed level.
Yeah, I mean, because I see so much, I can see how you're really a perfect combination of the different entities that are out there, and just quite unique in how you play that role of the confluence of the different stakeholders and optimizing for all of them. You definitely will de-risk for later stage investors coming in like ourselves and others, because you're taking all the early hard work, working in partnership with these seed startups. So it's a really, really interesting model, and I'm sure later stage and even family office will flock to flock to Fongit, right, as an opportunity, because you're de-risking in essence, right?
Yeah. Of course, that makes absolutely sense. But you know what? Sorry to interrupt. The results are coming. Now we can prove that the model works. Of course, it takes time, because to build a company it takes 10 years, 15 years, as I was saying before. But now we can show that, that Fongit has been among the top creator of new jobs in the last 3 years for the cantons. It means that the companies are generating what it takes, employment, new jobs. And this is fantastic. For each franc that the state gives to Fongit, we can prove that the state every year gets 1.3 francs back. So there's a direct return because there is a fiscal money coming from the people working for Fongit companies. So this is a model that works, is sustainable, and I encourage also other countries to explore it as much as they can, because it's fascinating.
Yeah, I can see the multiplier effect that goes beyond the return on investment, but return of value, and values across many, many measures, right? So,
sure.
So this is now what I call the open mic section, and this is where I have two more questions. Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't covered? And and you can choose the topic, and then the final question after that will be the recommendations to the audience. So first of all, kind of the open platform. Is there anything else that you want to talk about in a couple of minutes, and then we'll get to your recommendations to the audience?
No, I think I covered this point. There was actually something that I was. I would like really to promote the sense of the important role that the state can have when it comes to supporting innovation. What type of innovation to support? The fact that innovation takes time to get to the outcome that we need is. We say there is a kind of a marathon that you run at a sprinter race, and this is what it is. And our job in the end, in very essence, is very simple. I mean, we listen to entrepreneurs and we empower them, but the job is they do the job. It's very respectful what they do. Yeah, so that's it. Then when it comes to the other question, you say, what is my ask for the audience? So
Yeah, or your recommendations or any final thoughts, I guess, in closing that you want to give to the audience.
I mean, if I talk to entrepreneurs, I mean, to an audience of entrepreneurs, I would say again, don't pretend to be too cool for school. There is a moment where you need support. I needed support. The founder of the foundation needed support, and all successful entrepreneurs needed support. The unicorn idea, these billion-dollar companies with this kind of semi-god type of entrepreneurs that arrived at some point to the big success, are good for media, and for investors maybe. The reality is that an entrepreneur doing entrepreneurship is the toughest jobs you can do. It's a full dedicated jobs, and to get all the support you can, you must get it. It's up to you then to decide what and whom listen to, but get everything you can. And there's a lot of support around for you, and don't be afraid to take all the possibilities for that. It goes also for the investors, pick up the right investor at the right time. But again, if you have a good advisor, a good mentor, a good coach, a good board member, he or she will be able to provide this type of guidance. So don't be afraid, and fail fast and fail forward is always, the rule that we keep saying to all our entrepreneurs. And if I talk to the entrepreneurs, to the investors, again, I would say something that for them is obvious, but they might find difficult because they have their own investor to deal with. I mean, when you invest in companies, be prepared to spend a lot of time dealing with those. The good things come with time, and the innovation is a work that takes always more time than expected. I think that all funds are also adjusting their timeline for contemplating this more and more. When I started my career at VC, the funds were typically 7 years, seed funds, 7 years plus 2. You see, it's impossible. Now they are 10 years plus 2. So I think adapt to what is coming, and be prepared to new models of financing as well. And when it comes to the government, the state, or to people, stakeholders more in the public domain, I mean, you have all the tools for accelerating the transition, which is not only transition, ecological transition, is I would say an economic and social transition in the next year, in the years to come. This transition has to be, in my opinion, in the hands of the entrepreneurs to come. We will see so many sectors reshaped, redefined, some even disappearing. Okay, the answer comes from entrepreneurs, and the answer we don't have the answer. Even myself, in my privileged position, I have no idea how the future will look like. So the entrepreneurs are the ones that will guide us towards definitely a better future, creating a prosperous, sustainable, and responsible economy for the generation to come.
Antonio, thank you for your deep insights, years of experience, all the wisdom and talent that you bring to Fongit, based on doing it. So it's not theory to you, you've lived it. And such a marvelous, engaging chat we had today, and you shared so many deep experiences that are so valuable to the entire community, whether you're an investor or whether you're a startup or whether you're a researcher looking at translational research where you eventually want to commercialize. You covered it all, and I can see how Fongit is so uniquely positioned worldwide and a model for other partnerships worldwide. So thank you again for coming in and sharing all of this with our audience.
No, thank you very much for giving me the possibility. It's fantastic, Stephen. So really, really thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.